Hello, my name is Walter Nelson. Today I'll be talking about ragtime, and most particularly the dancing that was an essential part of it. So, what is ragtime? The phrase is a contraction of ragged time and is characterized by a syncopated melodic line and regularly accented accompaniment. I'm not much of a musician, but I know it when I hear it. And who is this gentleman who's credited with the words and music for the ragtime dance shown here? He is, of course, Scott Joplin, and he was one of the most well-known and prolific creators of what was, at the turn of the 20th century, that new and exciting syncopated ragtime sound. Mr. Joplin spent much of his time in St. Louis, Missouri, and in New Orleans, both ends of the Mississippi, which seemed to have been ground zero for this new musical style, with its deep African rhythmic roots. However, it quickly spread throughout the country and thence on to Europe and beyond. There are many opinions about what ragtime was and wasn't, but like the American public at the time, I won't sweat the details. In reality, the vast majority of popular music of the ragtime era was not technically ragtime, but that didn't seem to concern most folks in the pro or even anti-ragtime camps. There's something of a pattern in American popular music. African Americans introduce a new style. The style gets taken up by the white mainstream, and the name gets applied promiscuously to all sorts of things that may only be tangentially related. And then African Americans come up with something new, and the pattern repeats. This happened with ragtime, and then with jazz, and then swing, and then rock and roll, and on to our present day. But enough about music theory. This presentation is about dancing, primarily social dancing, in the ragtime era, essentially from the middle years of the 1890s up to about 1920, when jazz took up the mantle. What I plan to cover in this presentation is what dances were being danced and how they were done. I will also try to cover a wide range of styles, from upper class and sophisticated to low down and not at all respectable. I'll be showing a lot of clips ranging from the 1890s up to about 1920 by way of showing how people actually danced. I won't need to resort to picture, if you will, as you can actually see it, and if you are so inclined, do it. In the interest of time, I will be rudely interrupting many of these clips before they're finished, though I'll try to show enough that if you're dance inclined, you can get a real sense of how it was done. I recommend visiting my YouTube channel if you want to see the full clip, along with a couple hundred others covering everything from Victorian waltz to swing. In the interest of full disclosure, I should say that the thing that most interests me personally about dance history is actually getting out of my chair and doing the dances. That may become clear as this program continues. The first bit is a look back into the 19th century ballroom and the most popular dance form of the 19th century, the quadrille, to give you a sense of the music that was displaced by ragtime. This is the first figure of the Lancers quadrille. On your part. And here is ragtime. It's easy to forget, looking at ragtime through over a century of popular music, that what now sounds so quaint was once a revolution, exciting to people hungry for something new, and deeply disturbing to some who thought music, and the world in general, was just fine the way it was. It's also easy to forget, since most of us experience live ragtime music in a concert setting, perhaps played by old guys in striped shirts and straw boaters, or solo piano players, that ragtime was first and foremost dance music. And this is not surprising given how central dance was to society at the time. It was how men and women connected. It was a key element to that new urban phenomenon of dating. You could take your gal out to the pictures, or you could take her dancing. And if you took her out to eat, a lot of restaurants had live music or player pianos. You could dance there too. Dance halls were also one of the main places working class men and women could find one another. Further, there were balls thrown by various groups of all social classes, and parties usually included some opportunities to dance. Dance was pretty much everywhere, and nearly everyone, especially young folks who weren't hindered by physical infirmity or religious scruples, danced. However, as the 19th century drew to a close, Victorian-style dance and music had run its course. There were widespread complaints that men would come to a ball, spend the whole time outside smoking, leaving the ladies sitting in their chairs. It was a new century, and a lot of people were hungry for something new and exciting. So, a bit more on the dance aspects of ragtime. Ragtime had just been a thing you could play in the parlor as your friends and family listened politely. It would never have been the sensation it became. Dancing is a principal way people connect to music, how they can engage with music. It's all very nice to sit in a chair and listen. But if you want to really feel the music, to be the music, you either need to be the musician playing it, or you need to dance it. People bought ragtime sheet music and recordings and went to places where ragtime was being played so they could be the music by playing it or dancing it. So for about 2 decades, these modern dances, as they came to be called, ruled the dance floor. There was one bizarrely named fad after another. The latest step or style spread through the dance halls and was talked about in the papers, both promoted and condemned, often with bizarre and fanciful names. More on that later. The first ragtime dance, the one that opened the door to all those others, was the cakewalk. Cakewalk was a group dance, a sort of grand march with a difference. Started out as African Americans mocking the affected manners of the white folks. The men frequently wore top hats and carried canes, while the women might have had big hats, parasols. Most of us have seen a demonstration at one of the main steps of the cakewalk, performed by a frog singing "Hello, My Baby." That is a cakewalk kickstep, and his hat and cane are not an accident. It would usually start as a procession led by a couple or by a single leader, followed by couples who would promenade around the room. Then they would line up while each couple that wished to would take turns doing their own improvised routines. Originally, the couple judged best would win a cake, but the baked goods were no longer an essential part of the program by the time it became a worldwide sensation. Either the white folks didn't get the joke or felt like they were in on it, but it was extremely popular among the white mainstream around the turn of the 20th century. At first, the white folks were spectators, but they eventually wanted to play too. The thing about the cakewalk is that it is unapologetically silly. It's raucous and it's undignified and it's fun. This became a running theme in popular dance music for the next 20 years or so. This is what the cakewalk looked like.
Take you to Alexander's grandstand brass band. Ain't you coming along? Come on in here, come on in here. Alexander's ragtime band. Come on in here, come on in here. It's the best band in the land. They can play a bugle call like you never heard before. So natural that you'll wanna go to war. It's just the bestest band. What am? Honey lamb, come on along, come on along. Let me take you by the hand. Up to the man, who's the leader of the band. And if you care to hear the Swanee River played in ragtime.
And now on to the partner dances. The foundation of social dancing in the era was the dance in 4/4 time. There were many such dances, the two-step, then the Turkey-Trot, then the one-step, and then the Foxtrot, all with countless novelties and oddities. But they were all very similar in their essentials, and they could all be danced to the same music. On any given dance floor, you could find different couples doing any number of these different styles at the same time, on the same floor, to the same music. There was a gradual evolution as fashions changed, but the foundation remained the same spirit of fun and freedom that you found in the cakewalk infused all the other dances. The first couple dance of the ragtime era, emerging in the 1890s, was the two-step. The step, left together left and right together right, was essentially a polka without the hop. Around the turn of the century, it was not uncommon to find dance cards with nothing but two steps and waltzes. The waltz changed, but never went away. This continued until around 1910, when the Turkey-Trot muscled its way into the dance scene. I found no film depictions of the two-step before 1909, so we have to extrapolate that the earlier style was much the same as it was in 1909. This lack of film evidence is primarily a result of the state of filmmaking at the turn of the 20th century. When film was a Nickelodeon novelty, featuring such things as trains coming into stations or visual tours of city streets or vaudeville acts and such, there really wasn't a place for depictions of regular social dancing. However, as the first decade came to a close, films started to tell stories. And in this narrative format, in a world where dancing was pervasive, depictions of regular old social dancing started to appear routinely. So here is the two-step. Which brings us to the Turkey-Trot. What a Turkey-Trot is and is not is a bit ambiguous. Descriptions of the dance are not hard to find, but they frequently don't agree. Perhaps it's a two-step variation. Maybe it's more a one-step. Exactly what the feet might be doing is a bit muddled. Mostly, it looks like it's characterized by a very hoppy step and a rather odd and awkward-looking dance hold, as you shall see. It can be up-tempo or a more moderate tempo. Further, it seems like it became synonymous with whatever the older generation disapproved of in modern dancing. All that was bad was Turkey-Trot. In the Turkey-Trot era, it's a time of real backlash by the establishment against kids today with their dancing and their music. It was reported, but officially denied, that President Wilson canceled the 1914 inaugural ball because his wife was afraid that turkey trotting might break out. So here are some film depictions of the evil Turkey-Trot. now we come to the one step, so called because it's just walking to the music. It's pretty clear that people were already doing that as far back as the 90s. Dance historian friend of mine, Richard Powers, mentioned that he found a reference from then to something they called a four-step, which appears to be essentially a one-step. However, it was marketed heavily by the dance world's power couple, Vernon and Irene Castle, as a respectable alternative to the vulgar Turkey-Trot, and as such it gained considerable popularity. Their particular variant was the Castle Walk, which was very fast-moving, very vigorous version, and with the blessing of the Castles, more conservatively minded folks could finally embrace the modern dances. And here's some one-step. Vernon Castle wrote, directed, and starred in a semi-fictional biopic that intersperses some nice dance bits with some absurd melodrama, with his wife Irene being kidnapped by a jealous rival. One of the more interesting scenes is the Everybody's Doing It bit, where it shows three different social groups dancing. The first, a rather posh crowd with a dance master in the corner, are being dignified and a bit stiff with separation between their bodies. The next are middle-class folks in a cafe. They are a bit more free and are dancing body to body. And finally, there are African Americans who are moving their bodies and doing dips in ways that blue-stocking moralists found alarming. So here's a bit more one step. Hollywood depictions. The first is a Hollywood depiction of what Hollywood thought a Paris dive would look like. And the next is an odd little film put together by a Swedish avant-garde artist trying to be deliberately provocative and offensive in the form of his dancing. So the one step. In practical terms, if you were in an event where ragtime dancing is called for and you're not sure what to do and it's all in 4/4 time, do the one step. Just walk to the music. You can infuse it with your own personal style. You can do it close hold, very intimate, or you can have a formal separation. You can be loose and relaxed and wiggle to the music, or you can be straight up and down and formal. You can dip, you can sway, or you can do your fancy moves, or you can be dignified. It really is up to you. It is your dance to dance the way you want to. The next dance up is the Foxtrot. And the Foxtrot is an odd duck. It started out as a very specific bouncy variation, which you will see, and the name was an enormous hit. In practice, it looks like most people actually, rather than do a real Foxtrot, whatever that is, just sort of put a little more bounce in their one step. And then they stopped bouncing, but they still called it the Foxtrot. By 1920, almost anything in 4/4 time was called the Foxtrot, even though most of what was being done as a Foxtrot could probably have been lumped under the term of one step. So here is a Foxtrot. Which brings us to the enduring waltz. Some people were still doing the waltz in the old-fashioned Victorian way, but then there were two varieties of what were called modern waltz, the Boston and the Hesitation. The Boston worked a little better with faster tempos. It had a lot of complex variations, but in practice, it often degenerated into essentially step on the downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You step on the 1 and you step on the 4. The Hesitation worked better with slower tempos. It also had many complex variations, but it often degenerated into just step on every beat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Anyway, here is an interesting scene. It is from 1918 in Germany, and it shows a room dancing a good old Victorian rotary waltz, a Viennese style, perhaps. And then a couple comes in and they show them the Boston. So here it is. this next one is from the people who were doing that rather naughty one-step, and this is a naughty Boston. And in this next bit, we'll be seeing a bunch of Frenchmen who will be dancing a waltz and stepping just on the downbeats. The next dance is the hesitation waltz, slower than the Boston, with stepping on every beat. And anyway, here it is. On this one, you could see that they were stepping on each beat. So 3 steps to a measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Next, we get to the tango, which arrived in Paris from Argentina around 1911. The Parisians translated it into a more familiar dance vocabulary, and it became essentially a slow one-step. The films I'm about to show, the first is a Swedish instructional film from 1915. The next is a French crime melodrama from 1912, and then a Russian moralist melodrama, a particularly naughty tango from 1914. So here's the crime melodrama Parisian tango. the next dance here is the machixe. It is a dance of Brazilian origin, and it was popular with a more sophisticated crowd. You would probably not find it in a dance hall in the Lower East Side of New York or something. And now a few words about the forbidden dances. There was in the teens a fad for banning dances by name. Municipalities, dance halls, schools, all published lists of dances that they would just not tolerate. Good chance that the people who were publishing and compiling these lists didn't actually know what those names referred to. And in fact, many of them may not have really been a thing, or they certainly might not have been being danced anywhere in that vicinity. I suspect that people were copying lists from other sources, from newspapers and the like, and just sort of thinking, well, if those folks are again it, so am I. And a lot of this has to do with this general sense that ragtime was dangerous. It had African American roots, which in a very openly racist society made it suspect. It had intoxicating rhythms. It was causing Negro and lower class behavior to corrupt the nice middle class white kids, especially the girls. And it caused undignified behavior, disturbing intimacy. And in the progressive era, the same era that brought us prohibition, the solution is let's ban sin. So here is a list of banned dances that I found in various sources. The first two, the Tango, Turkey-Trot, Bunny Hug, Grizzly Bear, and Texas Tommy, appear in a lot of places. These others, your Corkscrew Twirl and your Glad Eye and your Half Nelson, Hoochie Moochie and Horse Trot, Hippo Dip, and so on and so on. Yiddish Gavat appear once or twice in the sources that I found, which is hardly a scientific survey. Interestingly enough, I did a search on Google Books for the Yiddish Gavat, wondering what is this oddly named dance. I found two references to it within the text of digitized books. And in both cases, there's no indication as to what the dance was, other than that it appeared to just be a generalized phrase for naughty dancing. So maybe that's a Yiddish Gavat. So one of the most popular dances to ban was the bunny hug. Now, there wasn't much to the bunny hug. You just held your partner close to you in a hug, and you waddled around as best you could. It's sort of a turkey trot brought to its logical and most awkward conclusion. And it is every bit as awkward as you might think to try to dance that way. So next we have the Texas Tommy, which is also nearly always among the banned dances. And the footwork looks like it comes from the Turkey-Trot. I've only found 2 film examples of it. Both are actually from the same source, from home movies taken in San Francisco in 1914. And in both cases, it is being done by African Americans. These clips appear on the internet a lot. They are generally done, since they were originally silent, people provide background music, and it's usually swing music. And they say, look, it's an early Lindy Hop. No, it's not. It certainly is the predecessor of the Lindy Hop. You can certainly see where the Lindy Hop came from. But the Texas Tommy was the Texas Tommy. The people who were dancing it did not think of it as a way station on the way to the wonderful pinnacle of Lindy Hop. So anyway, here is the Texas Tommy, a very naughty dance, apparently, and one that needed to be suppressed. And of course, as with all such things, they failed miserably to suppress it. Also on nearly every band list was the grizzly bear. I've only so far found one film depiction, French from 1913. It's not actually what I found described in literature. It's a little short on the bear stuff. The descriptions I've seen of the grizzly bear involve things like people menacing each other with claws, with their hands done up like claws, hugging each other, turning back to back and rubbing each other up and down on the back like a bear scratching himself on a tree, chasing each other, that sort of thing. But anyway, this gives a general sense of the grizzly bear. So finally, we have here a home movie from 1917, and it's just ordinary folks in a dance pavilion in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and it's a union picnic. Just note the variety and styles of steps. Everyone is essentially doing their own dance, and I guess that's what I'm going to say about that. So finally, ragtime dancing. If you're doing it, don't overthink it. Dance your dance. Don't worry about the fancy stuff that you might not be comfortable with. But if you are comfortable, then do it. Have fun. Be silly. If all you can do is walking and shuffling to the music, do that. Do more, do that. It's all up to you, and it's the ragtime era, and it is the time of dance freedom. And I am Walter Nelson, and I hope to see you on the dance floor.